Are you thankful to be here this morning? I know I am. It's great to see all of you this morning. We're continuing our series in the book of Galatians. We've been going through it for the past several weeks. And one of the themes that we've seen throughout the book is this idea of how we walk in the Spirit. We're called to walk in the Spirit. We're called to live by the Spirit. And I really want to unpack that concept this morning. So let's delve right in. Let's look again at Galatians chapter 5, starting in verse 16 through 18. But I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other, to keep you from doing the things that you want to do. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. Now, judging from this passage and the rest of what we've seen in Galatians, walking by the Spirit seems pretty important. What do we just read? Walk by the Spirit and you will not gratify the flesh. The next couple verses, 19 and 21, outline some of those things. If we walk by the Spirit, we will not gratify sexual immorality, idolatry, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy. And instead, we are filled with love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Back to verse 17, the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other to keep you from doing the things you want to do. So if you want to stop gratifying the desires of the flesh, living by your own power, falling into these things, the answer is not to try harder. The answer is not following 5 steps to make you a seemingly better person on the outside. The answer isn't for me to use these next 30 minutes, laying the crackdown on you and saying how you need to knock it off. That's called the law. That's the law. If you don't want to gratify the flesh, the answer is to walk in the Spirit, to be led by the Spirit, not going back to more law. 5:18, if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. Look at Romans 10, verse 3. For being ignorant of the righteousness of God and seeking to establish their own. That's us. I don't know about you, but that's me. Ignorant of the righteousness of God, trying to establish my own. Look at me. Look at what I don't do. Look at what I do. They did not submit to God's righteousness. For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes. End of the law for righteousness. I hope that, especially as we've been in Galatians, you've learned even more to be led by the Spirit, not the law. Blah, blah, blah. As Pastor Chuck likes to say now, blah, blah, blah. Are you being led by the Spirit? Listen, it's hard. It's hard to let yourself be led by the Spirit. It's easy to operate and run under your own version of the law, by your own effort, trying harder. Look at Galatians 3:3. Earlier in the book, are you so foolish? Having begun by the Spirit, are you now being perfected by the flesh? Like, what is going on here? This is the struggle for all of us. We were born again by the Spirit. And yet so often we just then leave the Spirit. Like, thank you, we leave the Spirit for our own sanctification and go to the law and our own flesh, our own works and effort. Listen, walking and being led by the Spirit is perhaps the most important thing you will ever learn how to do. Galatians 5:25 later on, if we live by the Spirit, let us also keep in step with the Spirit. Not going back to all that other stuff. Let us keep in step with the Spirit. So what does it mean? What does it mean to be led by the Spirit? Listen, I love this. As children are led, when we are led by the Spirit, we are also led by our Father, who leads us in ways that we do not know, are not natural to us, and to paths we never would have gone down. My 4-year-old daughter, Millie, thinks she has all the answers. She thinks she knows what to do. But I lead her in ways that she doesn't know and aren't natural to her. Paths she never would have gone down on her own. Why? Because I love her and I know what's actually best for her. When we are led by the Spirit, we are led out of the dependence on a legal and moral righteousness. We're led out from under the law and our own righteousness, and we are led to Jesus, of course. We are led to his blood for pardon and cleansing. We're led to his righteousness for our justification. We're led to his fullness for every supply of grace that we need. When we are led by the Spirit, we are led into the presence of God, and as we talked about a few weeks ago, we are undone. When we are led by the Spirit, it's no longer us who live, but it's Christ who lives within us. And though sometimes it gets rough, it does. Being led by the Spirit is hard sometimes. But when we are led by the Spirit, we are led ultimately from one degree of grace to glory until our last day. When we are led by the Spirit, that's what happens. Are you being led by the Spirit? Like I said before, the book of Galatians, you can see what it's like to be led by the Spirit. But the question I really have for us today is how? How? So walking in the Spirit sounds good. Sign me up. Sign your connection book, pass it down the row. I want to be led by the Spirit. But how? How am I led by the Spirit? I want to do it. How do I take the step? Look at Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 through 11. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, it will be opened. Or which one of you, if his son asks him for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will he give him a serpent? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask him? I think this has something to do with walking in the Spirit. Listen to this quote. One of the great short-term tragedies in the church is how little inclination we have to pray. The greatest invitation in the world is extended to us, and incomprehensibly, we regularly turn away to other things. How do I walk in the Spirit? How do I keep in step with the Spirit? We should never underestimate the role of prayer in keeping in step with the Spirit. I know it sounds like duh, but I have problems walking in the Spirit. It's hard. And yet I know that I don't value prayer as much as I should. I underestimate it. We should never underestimate the role of prayer in keeping in step with the Spirit. And listen, when we pray, part of praying, a big part of praying, is what Jesus has just described in Matthew 7, the verses we just read. Ask. Asking. Asking is a big, big part of prayer. Asking, seeking, knocking. So specifically today, I want to talk about how our asking, our Matthew chapter 7 asking, is how we keep in step with the Spirit. You want to keep in step with the Spirit? Ask. I'll unpack that more for us. In Matthew 7, verses 7 and 8, the verses I just read, they essentially repeat themselves, right? Ask, seek, knock, ask, seek, knock. Jesus is urging us. He's relaying the importance of asking, seeking, knocking. It's something he wants for us, something we should do. When you pause to consider that God is infinitely strong and can do all that he pleases, that he is infinitely righteous, so that he only does what is right, that he is infinitely good, so that everything he does is perfectly good, that he is infinitely wise, so that he always knows perfectly what is right and good, that he is infinitely loving, so that in all of his strength and righteousness and goodness and wisdom, he raises the eternal joy of his loved ones as high as it can be raised. When you pause to consider this, then the lavish invitations of this God to ask him for good things with the promise he will give them is unimaginably wonderful. Asking, just being real with God, asking him for things, both temporal and spiritual, approaching his throne, asking is crucial to walking and keeping in step with the Spirit. Because when we ask, certain things happen in our lives and in our hearts that keep us in step with the Spirit. Listen, here's the first thing that happens. Number one, when we ask, our boldness and our confidence increases. For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. When we ask, we learn to more boldly and confidently keep in step with the Spirit. Martin Luther said this: he knows that we are timid and shy, that we feel unworthy and unfit to present our needs to God. We think that God is so great and we are so tiny that we do not dare to pray. That is why Christ wants to lure us away from such timid thoughts, to remove our doubts, and to have us go ahead confidently and boldly. When I was 21 years old, I decided that I wanted to marry this girl. Decided I wanted to marry her. So, like any gentleman, what did I do? I, of course, went and I asked her parents. And it was kind of funny because both Gwen's mom and dad, they didn't really spend too much time asking me questions. I guess it's because I was such a catch. What could you question when I show up? She's clapping down here. She agrees. They all responded with statements like, sure, go ahead. Sounds good to us. Let us know if you need anything. Yes. I'm sure it's because deep down, they're probably thinking, how could she possibly do any better than this? What a perfect guy. And now, God has reversed my fortunes, and he's given me 2 daughters. So I know that the time will eventually come when I may be asked, and listen, record me, I will be asked. Put this on tape, mark it down. I'm just gonna roll it out whenever I am asked. I told you I'd be asked. And I will be asked, not because of some legalistic thing of checking the box, but listen, asking teaches a young man to be bold and confident. Asking leads to boldness and confidence. When we ask, we learn to more boldly and confidently keep in step with the Spirit. Our boldness and our confidence increase. And also, number 2, when we ask, our faith in God increases. When we ask, the faith we have to walk in the Spirit increases. A huge part of walking with the Spirit is asking, and then God telling you no. Wait a minute. I thought it said ask and you will receive. Isn't God a genie in the bottle? Ask and receive. Well, if you've ever asked before, you probably have an experience in God saying no. or at least you perceive that God has told you no. Maybe you've asked for a healing and it didn't happen. Maybe you've asked for a fixed relationship and it's still broken. Maybe you've prayed that your child would be there sitting next to you right now, but they're not there. Maybe you've prayed for a job and you still don't have one. See, when God says no, it's then you can either have a faith crisis or a faith increase. You can either walk away from the Spirit and say, that's it, I'm done with you, I'm going to do it my own way now, or you can walk even more so with the Spirit. You know, I never really thought of it this way before, but do we really want God to give us everything we ask for? Do we really want that? If God did everything that we asked of him, wouldn't we then be God? Do you know one time that actually happened? When God gave a man the power to become God for a few days. Do you know that God is actually Morgan Freeman? God gave Bruce Nolan, Bruce Almighty, the power to become God for a few days. It's a movie if you haven't seen it. I'm not being blasphemous up here, okay? It's a movie, Jim Carrey. It's very funny. Anyway, if you've ever seen the movie, you know, Bruce starts hearing all these prayers in his head. God said, okay, if you think you can do a better job, go ahead and go for it. So part of being God is hearing the prayers of the people. So eventually, you know, every second is consumed with prayers in Bruce's head, and he's getting annoyed, so he just says, just give them whatever they want. Whatever they want, yeah, sounds good, done, check. Well, of course, then, towards the end of the movie, the world goes into complete and utter chaos. It's like burning down. Do you want to bear the weight of infinite wisdom? Can you infallibly decide how everything should turn out? The text itself, Matthew chapter 7, the passage we just read, it points away from the conclusion that ask and you will receive means ask and you will receive the very thing you ask for, when you ask for it, in the way you ask for it. It doesn't say that, and it doesn't mean that. Here's what it does mean. When we ask, as children looking away from ourselves, not relying on our own might and strength, the promise of this passage is that God does hear us and will give us good things. You just have to have the faith to believe it. Understanding and resting in that fact increases our faith to walk in the Spirit through it all, no matter what. The increase of faith comes in knowing that, yes, sometimes he gives us exactly what we ask for, right when we ask for it. But other times, we have to have the faith to know that sometimes he's giving us something better. Sometimes he gives it to us in a time that's better. Sometimes he gives it to us in a way that he knows better. Have you ever asked for more patience? I have. Big mistake. Big mistake. God, make me a more patient person. God's like, here you go. Here's a wife and 2 daughters. Have fun with that. There's your patience. Whew. See, a lot of times God doesn't drop box whatever we ask for to us. God didn't drop box patience into my soul. He gave me 3 girls in my house so I could exercise a whole lot of patience. And I've learned to recognize that through what he's given me, through my family, I've become more like Jesus. I've become patient. I've become very, very patient. Very patient. That's walking in the Spirit. That's walking in the Spirit. Have you ever asked to be used by God before? God, use me. I want to be used by you. Take my life. I want to be used. I was dumb enough to pray that prayer in college all the time. God, I just want to be used. Reveal to me your way. I want to be used in the best way. Do you know that I used to make fun of youth ministry majors all the time? These kids running around campus. Like, what are you doing? I was a biology major. I was elite. I was going to make the big bucks. I'm going to be used by God making a lot of money. Hallelujah. Make fun of all these guys. I mean, why would you ever want to spend your life going on retreats, eating pizza, drinking Mountain Dew, staying up late watching kids prank each other? Why would you ever want to do something so foolish? Use me, God. You want to know what I did last weekend? I was at our teens youth retreat. I stayed up late watching them prank each other. One kid actually got thrown into a shower at 3 a.m. and they turned the water on him. Now you might be asking, he's out of control. I'm never sending my kid with anything he does. Listen, I talked to this kid the next day and he goes, yeah, man, I deserved it. Okay. Use me, God. Use me. Use me. See, a lot of times God does give us exactly what we ask for. It just doesn't come in the package that we thought it was going to come in. See, God can wrap a way better package than we can. We just have to have the faith to open it. That is walking in the Spirit. Remember, the increase of faith comes in knowing that, yes, sometimes he gives us exactly what we ask for, right when we ask for it. Other times, he gives us something better in a different package than what we were expecting. But other times, he doesn't give us what we ask for, because that is somehow, some way better. Part of walking in the Spirit is asking, and then God telling us no. And I feel like we learn to walk in the Spirit even more in those cases, even when he doesn't. Habakkuk chapter 3. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food. You have a hard time believing that they didn't pray for all those things, for fruit on the vines, produce of the olive, fields yielding food. But look, though it should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, the fold be cut off, be no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. God the Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the deer's. He makes me tread on my high places. When we ask, and even when he doesn't, our faith increases, and we learn to walk in the Spirit, not on our own power, not on our own understanding, but we really learn to walk in the Spirit. Do you know how powerful it is to sing no matter what? When you're going through the valley, when you're in the midst of a struggle, when it didn't turn out the way you wanted it to? Do you know how powerful it is to sing, you can do all things. You can do all things but fail. And you've never lost a battle, you never lost a battle, and I know you never will. Do you know how powerful it is to sing, you are good, you are good, you are good, and you're never gonna let me down? Do you know how powerful it is to sing, I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory, for the battle belongs to the Lord. Do you know how powerful it is to sing, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well, it is well. It is well with my soul. That's called faith. That's called walking in the Spirit. In Daniel chapter 3, 3 men, they're about to be thrown into the fiery furnace. Before they're about to be thrown in, they say one of my very favorite statements in the whole Bible. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. He will. I believe it. I'm asking it. But if not, even if he doesn't, even if I get incinerated in the fiery furnace, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Do you know how powerful it is to keep asking, to keep singing, to keep singing, to keep seeking, to keep knocking? Because you know, even if he doesn't, I have the faith to proclaim that I still believe he's sovereign all things and he is good. That's called faith. That's called walking in the Spirit. So listen, when we ask, our boldness and our confidence increases. When we ask, our faith in God increases. And one more, when we ask, we learn to see the ultimate good thing. Matthew 7:11, if you then who are evil know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? Listen to this from St. Augustine. For what would he not now give to sons when they ask, when he has already granted this very thing, namely, that they might be sons? What then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, if we are his children, his sons and daughters, if he is for us, who could ever be against us? For all we could ever ask for, we should ask knowing that God has already given us everything. He's given us everything. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also with him graciously give him all things? He's given us all things. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, so we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light, momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. As we look to the things that are seen, we do not look to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. You see, listen, when we ask, when we approach his throne, God has way more than the temporal in mind. He has way more than we can see in mind. He has a much bigger plan for you. He's working to conform you to the image of his son. And we become more like Jesus, not through more law, not through more bashing us with guilt, but we become more like Jesus by walking in the Spirit. And as we keep going to him, as we keep asking, his promise is that he's going to give us the greatest good gift of all, the gift of nothing but Jesus. You see, Jesus is the ultimate good thing that our Father has already given us. So how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask him? That is how asking leads us in the Spirit. But I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. Why? Because in all things you are being transformed into the image of Jesus, who never gratified the desires of the flesh. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. To the one who knocks, it will be opened. It's a promise. If you desire to walk with the Spirit, if you desire to keep in step with the Spirit, keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. Do you want to be led by the Spirit? Do you want to be led by nothing but Jesus? Keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. Is there a struggle you have? A temptation you often wrestle with? You know what to do? Keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. Do you have a relationship strain? Do you have marriage problems? Do you have a wayward child? Do you have an unsafe family member? Keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. Are you doubting your faith? Maybe you don't even believe if it's all real. Don't know if it's true. You feel abandoned by God. Keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. Do you feel that God has ignored your cries, that he's far off? Keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. Do you anguish for God to move in the hearts of people you love, of people in our church, in our community? Do you want to see God make a big move in using us? Keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. You want to stop living in all the law stuff, blah, 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 all the stuff that weighs you down? Do you want to embrace all that nothing but Jesus has for you? Keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. Listen, I know, I said it earlier, walking in the Spirit is hard. It's hard. It's easy to be timid. It's easy to shrink away. It's easy to be led by our own flesh. It's easy to gratify the flesh. It's easy to abandon God when we think he said no. It's easy to see the bad things instead of the good things. So there's just one more thing that I want to teach you how to do this morning. I want to teach you how to knock. Because everyone who knocks, it will be opened to you. You know how to knock? Right like this. Guys, help me out. That's how to knock.
And we believe he'll do it again and again